The Clock on the Mantelpiece. A gentle bedtime story for grown-ups. In the rolling hills of Vermont, where the maples turn gold in the fall and snow lays soft like a blanket in winter, there stood a small cabin, half hidden among the trees. It wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. It had creaky wooden floors, a stone chimney, and wide windows that let the morning light pour in like honey. Inside that cabin, the air always seemed to hum with memory. Arthur Wellesley had returned to this place after retiring at 68. He had spent most of his life surrounded by books, a librarian in a small New England town, with a love for quiet, steady things, well-worn novels, fresh tea, old jazz on a Sunday afternoon. But when his wife Eleanor passed away 3 years earlier, something inside him had slowly begun to dim. Life moved on, yes, but it moved without color. The cabin had been their weekend escape, then their retirement plan, and eventually, their forever place. Now, it was his alone. One late October evening, Arthur stood by the fireplace, watching the flames flicker like memories. He wore his thick wool cardigan, the one Eleanor had knitted him during the winter of '92, with a slightly crooked collar she never quite got right. His hand rested on the wooden mantel above the fire, and there it was, the old clock. It had been Eleanor's pride. A round walnut timepiece with golden hands and delicate carvings on its face. She used to wind it every evening, without fail. "A house isn't alive if its heart doesn't beat," she would say, giving the key a twist and tapping the glass with a satisfied little smile. Arthur hadn't wound it once since she'd been gone. It had sat there, silent and still, like a ship docked too long. Tonight, though, something was different. The air had a whisper in it. Not a sound exactly, but a tug, soft and persistent. He stared at the clock for a long time. Then slowly, he opened the small door on its back and took out the winding key. Tick. It was faint, but it was there. The first beat in 3 years. Tick, tick. He set his tea down and sat in his old armchair, the one next to Eleanor's. Her chair had remained untouched, a folded quilt still draped across its back. He closed his eyes, letting the clock's rhythm guide him, like the gentle rocking of a boat on still water. And as the ticking continued, the memories came. He saw her again, not in sadness this time, but in warmth. Eleanor, 27, standing in the library's poetry section in a mustard yellow sweater, frowning at a copy of Walt Whitman. She always said Whitman was too proud of his own voice, and Arthur had laughed, not because he disagreed, but because she said it like she knew the man personally. Their courtship had been slow, deliberate, long walks, shared sandwiches, reading under trees. She had a way of making every moment feel like something worth remembering. Even when they argued, and they did, it ended with soft laughter and a cup of hot cocoa. The clock had been a gift for their 10th anniversary. They had stumbled upon it in a little antique shop in Montpelier, and Eleanor had fallen in love with it instantly. "It looks like it remembers things," she said. She had a way of seeing souls in objects, the story in a chipped mug, the dignity in a faded curtain. And the clock had become a fixture in their life. They would listen to its chimes every evening, a comforting ritual that framed their days. Now, in the quiet warmth of the firelight, Arthur let those memories wash over him. The house felt less empty somehow, less like a shell. At 10 o'clock, the clock gave a soft, hesitant chime. Not perfect, it was old after all. But it was enough. Arthur opened his eyes. The fire had gone down to glowing embers. Outside, the wind stirred the trees gently, their branches tapping against the glass like old friends checking in. He turned his head, just slightly, toward Eleanor's chair. And for a moment, just a moment, he thought he saw her. Not as a ghost, not as a trick of the light, but as a feeling, a presence, a memory made real in the hush between seconds. She sat as she always had, legs tucked beneath her, eyes soft, a faint smile on her lips. And he didn't flinch, didn't speak. He just looked at her, and she looked back. She reached out her hand. He reached out his. Their fingers didn't quite touch, but it was enough. Then, as softly as she had come, she faded, like breath on glass. Arthur exhaled. Not in sorrow, in peace. He stood, stretched, and wound the clock one more time before heading to bed. The ticking followed him down the hall, each beat a quiet promise. That night, he slept deeply, no dreams, no waking thoughts. Just a soft, steady rhythm keeping time. In the mornings that followed, Arthur fell into a new rhythm. He began each day by opening the curtains wide, letting the light pour into the cabin. He brewed a strong pot of tea, 2 cups still, out of habit, and sat by the fire to read. And every evening, just before the sky turned purple and the stars began to peek through the branches, he wound the clock. He polished its wooden edges, adjusted its hands, and tapped the glass just like Eleanor used to. Neighbors began to stop by again, old friends bringing pies, knit scarves, and stories. Arthur started writing letters to his grandchildren, long and meandering, filled with memories and bits of wisdom they might not understand until they were older. He even took up humming, something he hadn't done in years, small tunes Eleanor used to whistle while baking. The clock ticked on. Not perfectly. Sometimes it lost a minute here or there. Occasionally it skipped a chime. But it beat. And that was enough. Because the heart of the house had begun to beat again, not just because of the clock, but because of what it carried. The sound of time, yes, but also the echo of love, the pulse of memory, and the gentle rhythm of a life once shared, still present, still alive. In the stillness of night, when the wind moved through the trees like an old lullaby, Arthur would sit by the fire, sip his tea, and listen to the ticking. And in that sound, he found comfort. In that sound, he found her. And in that sound, he found sleep.